We have plenty of NHL news and rumors to take a look at here today, including some big updates on Sidney Crosby. Pittsburgh media, for the first time, is suggesting that Crosby playing for another NHL team before he retires seems like an actual possibility. We'll discuss the latest comments and some teams where he may end up should he make that decision. Kaprizov might want to go to Chicago, according to some latest rumors. We'll take a look at that. Marc-Andre Fleury's retirement is kind of put on hold. He signed a PTO with the Penguins. We'll discuss how that's expected to work out. We also have some updates on the Toronto Maple Leafs regarding an extension for Anthony Stolarz and a trade possibly for Nick Robertson. Another trade rumor around the Chicago Blackhawks. And do the players want to change the playoff format back to the 1 versus 8 format? We'll discuss that as well coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have plenty of interesting topics to cover here in today's video. First up, I want to start with the big news we got from the Pittsburgh Penguins today. Marc-Andre Fleury has signed a PTO and will reappear with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, you're probably asking yourself and questioning, well, I thought Fleury was retiring, and the belief is he is still going to do that. This is basically a way for him to retire as a Pittsburgh Penguin. Essentially, he is going to be making a couple of appearances. He's basically, sometimes you see players signing like a one-day contract and then retire with the team. Usually it's just a sign a contract and then they have like a ceremony and away we go. Well, Fleury's actually going to take the ice with the Penguins in the preseason. He's going to attend a practice and then appear in an exhibition game on September the 27th. So the belief is that that'll be his way of retiring as a Penguin. Now, some people kind of wonder, knowing Fleury, is there any chance he kind of gets the itch to continue playing? If he looks good, anyway, Pittsburgh brings him back. I really don't think that's the case. I think this is just a way for him to return and retire as a Penguin. At least that's what the reports indicate. So we'll take that at face value. But I think this is where most people kind of see him when they think of Fleury's career. It makes sense for him to retire as a Penguin. I don't think any other team that he played for, whether it be Minnesota or Vegas or briefly in Chicago, if any of those teams should take offense to that at all. I mean, he had his most success with the Penguins, drafted first overall, 3 Stanley Cups on his resume, lots of success, not that he didn't have success elsewhere, but that's where he started, and that's where I think most people, when you think of Fleury, you think of him as a Penguin. So it makes total sense to me that the Penguins would try to bring him back and get him to retire with that team. It's great on the organization, great move by them, and great for Fleury to take the ice. I think this is something that I like to see more players do. When you hear of players coming back to sign a one-day contract, why not take the ice? Jump either. Some guys can maybe go out for warm-up, but that's usually about as far as it goes. But I mean, it's great for the player. He gets to don the full equipment and get out there one more time with his old team. The fans get to see him play one more time in that uniform. I mean, younger fans who may not have been around to see him play the first time, I think it's just a win-win, great situation overall. So overall, I'm quite happy to see that news today. Now, the Buffalo Sabres, we have some different kind of news there. The Sabres have placed development coach Adam Mair, former NHL player, on leave for an indefinite time after he was arrested on a drunk driving charge, which he was pulled over when he actually had 3 kids in the car as well. So certainly not something you like to see or hear about. I'm not sure, what Mayor's explanation is or anything. We don't have comments from him or anything like that, but he was arrested facing DUI with 3 kids in the car. So he is on leave from the Sabres for right now, and that's all we know about the scenario. Now, we also got some more PTOs here today as well. The Pittsburgh Penguins are bringing in Brett Murray. The Panthers got a couple of more as well, including Daniel Walcott and Josh Lopina. And the Rangers are bringing in Andre Schuster, formerly from the NHL. He's 34 years of age now, hasn't played in a while in the NHL in North America. Has been spending the last 3 years playing over in Europe. A couple other updates around some injuries. The Sabres, of course, we knew made an interesting signing yesterday, bringing in veteran goaltender Alex Georgiev on a cheap 1-year deal. And I know myself, I was questioning, why are they doing this? They already have Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. They already brought in Alex Lyon. They have Devin Levi. what's going on here. And we got word today that apparently UPL is dealing with an injury. So he came back to Buffalo. Training camp hasn't officially opened, so we'll probably get more of an update once it does. But for right now, he get back to Buffalo and sustained some sort of injury while training. Now, it's being described by some as like a tweak, but there's really just not much known about it. I think they have some, maybe some concerns that it could be a longer term thing. We don't know. Clearly, they must have concerns about being longer term if they're going to sign somebody, right? When we're still quite a few weeks away from the season starting. So I'm not sure what he's dealing with, and I'm not sure exactly when we're going to learn more about it, but that is why he was signed basically as an insurance piece. Speaking of injuries, we also got word today that Corey Perry, new to the Los Angeles Kings this year, apparently was injured today. Of course, we know many NHL teams have most of their players, if not all, doing their skates together before training camp to get ready for it. So it's believed that he was injured. We don't have a clip or anything to see. Don't know exactly what happened, but this came from John Hoven, who's a well-connected reporter, saying that the belief was that Perry was taken off the ice in a wheelchair of some sort. So that tells me that it's obviously got to be some sort of a leg injury or ankle or something, that walking was an issue, or going off on his own feet. So not really sure what to make of that or how serious it might be. We'll have to wait and see some more updates. So we'll see if Corey Perry is going to be out for any period of time, or if he'll be okay to start the year on time. Now, there's been some comments going around as well. I know one from Cale Makar from the NHL Media Day or Media Tour, that he feels most of the players around the NHL that he's talked to, at least, would like to see the playoff format change back to the old 1 versus 8 instead of the divisional matchups that we see with the top 3 teams and then the 2 wildcard teams. So it makes you wonder, he thinks a lot of players want this. I know every time it's been brought up, Gary Bettman has been pretty quick to strike it down. Anytime you've seen a reporter ask him about it, he kind of pours cold water on it, saying how much they like the rivalries and the divisional matchups and all that. And it was fine in the beginning, but we've seen some of the same matchups year after year after year. You don't want your playoffs to get boring. Look at Edmonton versus LA 4 years in a row. How many times do we have to see this before we, can maybe get something different? So I'd be curious to see if the players keep talking about this, if maybe they could be the force of change. I know I'd like to see it change. Sometimes the 1 versus 8 in the current format, if you actually take the teams the way they are and kind of reformat it, sometimes you get almost all the same or pretty close to the same matchups, but sometimes there's very different and interesting too, right? So be curious to see if we do get any change on that anytime soon. I would like to see them change it up just to go with a fresh outlook here to get some different matchups for the playoffs. Now, bunch of rumors around the NHL. We'll get to some of the bigger ones like Crosby and Kaprizov here in just a moment. First up, on Elliot Friedman's 32 Thoughts podcast yesterday, he did mention another rumor around the Chicago Blackhawks, and that was regarding forward Lukas Reichel. He said that Reichel's name has been out there in the rumor mill, and it's understood that the Blackhawks are probably willing to trade this player. And they're willing to make the move if they can find the right trade partner that makes sense for them. And he believes that the player understands that and that thinks it just might be time for a fresh start. So, of course, I think it's fair to say that Lukas Reichel hasn't quite lived up to the potential they were hoping when they drafted him. He's still young, though, so I do think it's fair to say that he could still be a really good player. So, of course, you want to proceed with caution on some of those guys, but the Blackhawks are becoming a team that's pretty loaded in young talent. They do have a lot of interesting players who could work out just fine for them, so maybe they feel like making a move on Reichel might just be what's best for both sides. So be curious to see if we do end up seeing him move, but based on Friedman's reports, it sure sounds like it's a possibility. Couple of things around the Maple Leafs. Dave Pagnotta is reporting that the Toronto Maple Leafs and Anthony Stolarz continue to work away, trying to find a deal on a contract extension. No real progress has been made as of right now. All we've heard so far is that they're talking. We don't really know kind of what the stumbling blocks are, if it's more about money or term or anything of that nature, but they've been engaged in conversations the last little while. But what he's saying is no real progress to report on here as of yet, but talks are continuing. Both sides, neither one of them right now seem to be remotely concerned about something not working out, at least as of right now. Now, Chris Johnson with another Leaf tidbit saying that he wonders if Nick Robertson's time with the Leafs might be running out, and thinks there's a real good possibility that the Leafs might end up trading him ahead of the season starting. Now, we know the Leafs ideally do need to free up some money. We know they've been rumored to be wanting to move David Kampf and Calle Jarnkrok since like April or May, and nothing has materialized here as of yet. We talked yesterday that I see about an article that I'd come across suggesting that maybe the Sharks can do them a solid and take one of those guys off their hands, and maybe they could, but they don't really need to. I'm not really sure there's much benefit for them, depending on what kind of a sweetener Toronto's willing to put in, then maybe, but unless you're offering something really good, they may not bother wanting to help them out. Robertson would probably have more value than the other two guys, being more of a goal scorer than the other guys, but we will see if CJ's onto something here and if we'll see a Nick Robertson trade before the season gets underway. Now on to the bigger rumors here. Kirill Kaprizov, of course, we've heard all the talk around him about, could he, what's his motivation here, I guess is the bigger question. We heard that the Wild, Bill Guerin and Craig Leopold, the owner, had presented him with an 8-year deal, NHL record-setting $128 million, $16 million per season, and he rejected it. So that, to me, if you're any team, I don't care who you are, what team you are, what GM you are, when you have a player rejecting a record-setting deal, that's got to set off alarm bells and bring great concern. Now, I don't expect them to come out publicly and say, yeah, we're real concerned we're going to lose this guy, because that's not really good for anything. However, they didn't deny it. We've got it confirmed from Frank Seravalli and Michael Russo. So I believe it to be the truth. I mean, all the comments from Guerin said was that he didn't understand how the information could get leaked out, but he said I didn't come from their side. He talked to, he's got a good relationship with Kirill's agent. Doesn't think it came from their side. So I'm like, well, it came from somewhere. I don't know what to tell you, but it's out there, and multiple reporters are claiming it to be the truth. And Guerin never outright denied it either. So we got to go with the fact that it is true. Now, Elliot Friedman had commented on his podcast yesterday saying, well, makes you wonder, is he going to try to grind them for more money, or does he want to leave? Now, between Elliot Friedman, Frank Seravalli, and Michael Russo, they've all kind of made the same sort of comments that they don't have any information to suggest that the Kaprizov camp wants a shorter term. So this might not be all about money, but there's some that think it's very much about money, but it might also be about the fact that he may want to play somewhere else. And we don't really know all those details. And there's also conflicting reports out there, depending on who you ask. Some say it's happened and some say it hasn't. So we don't know what's true at this point. But it is believed by some that the Wild have asked Kaprizov for a list of trade places he would consider. He has a full no-move clause. If they want to trade him, if they don't think they can sign him, they're going to need to work with him and get his consent to do so. So, there's reports suggesting that conversation has happened. There's some that deny that's happened. So I'm not really sure where that stands. But, it was a Russian reporter, I believe, that was the first to report that. So I really don't know what to make of that. But it's certainly not sounding or looking good for the Minnesota Wild to keep their star player and the most dynamic player I think that franchise has ever seen. They thought they'd go in with a record-setting deal and it would be no problem. Well, depending on what Kirill wants, it may be. Now, so Elliot's theory, of course, was that he very well might be grinding them for more money. So with the cap going up, they might be of the belief that another team is going to offer him 19 or 20 million per season. Now it'd be 7 years, but instead of 8, but still, and both, I know Michael Russo had mentioned on his emergency podcast he did the other day about this breaking news that he knows Kirill really likes Chicago. When he was just kind of spitballing about if he did leave Minnesota, where could he end up? And Mark Lazarus reported about a year ago that, so it would have been in the fall of 24, he said that back at the 24 draft, the big rumor on the draft floor was that Kirill Kaprizov wanted to end up in Chicago. Now, he did later clarify, saying he didn't think that Kirill, it didn't mean that Kirill was going to ask to be traded to Chicago. but that maybe he was looking to end up there as a free agent when his deal expired. So we've got that report from last year. We've got Russo now saying that we know Kaprizov really likes Chicago. Does he want to end up in Chicago? Would Chicago be the team that Elliott might have in the back of his mind that would offer him crazy money like $19 or $20 million? Now, we don't know any of that to be true. That's all speculation, but what if? I mean, it's a very interesting concept. Now, I guess the other part of this is that when it comes to the money, there's some that are saying that even though it's a record-setting deal in $16 million, the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to see the salary cap likely explode and continue to drive way up. So when you're looking at percentage of cap, which a lot of agents look at when negotiating deals, looking at what the percentage of it's going to be in year after year as the cap continues to go up, $15 million or $16 million now is going to be less of a percentage, of course, in a couple years' time. So maybe they are grinding for more money. So I guess we'll see. Now, does Minnesota have a limit? How much is too much? What is their max? Did they already present their max? Is there truth to them asking him for his trade list? This is going to be a very interesting story to follow here as we go closer to training camp to the beginning of the season. As Michael Russo had explained on his emergency podcast the other day, he doesn't think if they're confident they don't think they can sign him, he doesn't think they should let him get on the ice. They should trade him. Basically is what he's saying, because letting him get on the ice is really, really risky. Because what if he gets hurt? And then he could be out for an extended time. His value could go down. They might not be able to trade him at all. He could walk next summer. It could turn out to be an utter disaster. So how they handle this is going to be really, really, really interesting. So let me know what you think and how this is all going to play out with Kaprizov. Now on Crosby, of course, for the most part, we've talked about this really just as a hypothetical on a few occasions here in the past, but we've never really had any serious intel suggesting that, it was, something that was actually being discussed or that it was, something that was likely to happen. It was just more of a hypothetical what if, type of scenario. And more than anything, it's usually teams, fan bases out there saying, well, Crosby should leave Pittsburgh because they're sucking now and they're losing. He should come to Montreal. He should come to Colorado. And we've talked about what some of those moves might look like. Well, for the first time, we're hearing Pittsburgh media now. Athletics' Josh Shea made comments in his latest that saying that he never thought a Crosby trade was imaginable. Now I'm not so sure. Of course, remember, Pat Brisson also had commented to Pierre LeBrun in his article the other day about basically saying he thinks Sid should move on. I mean, kind of, summarizing here, but not word for word, but basically saying that, Crosby being in the playoffs and being in a competitive situation, we kind of get the impression Pat Brisson thinks Crosby should go, but ultimately, it's Crosby's decision, and they will be given the full authority to kind of make their own choice here. But the comments continue that if Pat Brisson is indeed speaking for his client, then there's reason to believe that Crosby's frustration with the current state of the Penguins is at a boiling point. So maybe, just maybe, a trade could happen after all. Now, most people have said they don't really think Crosby would want to change teams during the season. So most people believe that, I've talked about this before, that if Crosby ever did make that decision, that it would be during the off season. But you never know. Like we've said, losing can get to people. Crosby's an incredibly intense, competitive person. If he decides enough's enough and I can't take this losing anymore, maybe he changes his mind. Either way, I mean, listening to CJ from TSN and Josh Yohe and others talk about it, it sure sounds like it could be a possibility. Now, Chris Johnson mentioned Montreal and Colorado. I mean, we know the connection of Crosby to the Habs. He talked about that with LeBrun the other day. Obviously he grew up a Habs fan. His dad was drafted there, never got to play, but still they have a connection to that team from his childhood. Obviously Colorado is one of his best buddies and, fellow hometowner in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, Nate McKinnon. Would he want to go play with Nate? That's an intriguing concept. There's also an article today in the Ottawa newspaper from Bruce Garriox wondering, would Crosby make sense for the Sens? Now, yeah, fun to think about. I don't know if he decides to leave Pittsburgh. I don't know that there's really anything tying him to the Sens, so I think it's a long shot at best. I know they were talking about the Sens on Overdrive as well with the Leaf guys there with Hayes, Noodles, and O-Dog. But I mean, it's basically they were talking about what young core piece, if you're Ottawa, would you be willing to give up to bring Crosby in? So yeah, like some were speculating, would it have to be like a Shane Pinto, or would they ask for Jake Sanderson? Well, there's no way they're giving up Sanderson. I as much as they'd love to have Crosby, I just don't think that makes any sense for them. Give up a career of Sanderson for a year or two of Crosby. Like, is Crosby going to help them get the cup? Like, that's the question you're going to ask, right? And maybe they could. It'd have to be like real serious cup contenders knocking on the door, think that they need like this one more piece to get over the hump, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not really sure that makes sense. A little bit of a long shot. Now, I guess if there is anything, Crosby is friends with Drake Batherson. Of course, Drake's also from Nova Scotia. They train together in the summer. They golf together a lot. I mean, I think he's closer with McKinnon, but, he is good buddies with Drake too. So, I mean, long shot, but I mean, there was an article that thought I'd mention it. Most people think Montreal and Colorado would be the much more likely scenarios if he ever makes that choice. But to hear Pittsburgh media actually say, I'm not so sure anymore, maybe he will go, is new developments. So what do you think? Do you think Crosby is going to get frustrated to the point that he will make that choice and he will go? And where does he go if that choice is made? And what kind of trade package is it going to take to get him? He's under contract for a few years, so it would have to be a trade. But knowing that he has full control over the trade, as much as he's one of the greatest players of all time, I don't know that, Dubas is not going to hold up a trade for Crosby, trying to hardball the team to get something better and better and better, right? He's going to want to do right by Sid and make sure he goes where he wants to go, which means there's not going to be a lot of leverage. I don't know if the return is going to be as big as people might think, but let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.